Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. I'm about to do some more mods to the bike. Just right off the bat, you can see that I put on a bottle cage. It's just an inexpensive carbon fiber cage, which is almost an oxymoron. Usually things that are made of carbon fiber are not inexpensive, but I think this was about $10, $8. And I got a bottle, a fresh one. I've still got some bottles, but they are pretty tattered. This is an insulated bottle. Definitely recommend insulated bottles during the winter, even during the summer. I mean, you want your cold drink to be cold. You want your lukewarm drink to at least stay somewhere around cool and not actually freeze during the winter. It can happen. So insulated bottles are a good thing to have, and they're not that much more expensive, and you're really not sacrificing a lot of volume either. Now, as some of you know, I've got lower back problems. My lower spine's full of metal, and the easiest way to relieve stress on your lower back on a mountain bike is to raise the handlebars and bring them closer to you so you're sitting more upright. So right off the bat, this stem, a lot of people swap these out for something a little shorter. These are about 90 millimeters, it might even be 100. I am swapping that for a 90 millimeter that is a 45-degree angle. This is about $10. And you know, it's the same distance, but it's at a 45-degree angle, so it is moving the bar closer to you dramatically. And even though this is a bit of a riser bar, it's not very high. It's only about 30 millimeter rise. You can also see that I have swapped the seat post and seat as I said I was going to. Another thing that can be done is to move the seat further forward so it's closer to the bars, again for lower back. As you can see, I've got some space here. I can slide this forward. You can tell by the damage here that this is not a brand new seat. This is a Bontrager seat that I've had for years. I find it to be very comfortable. Even when I was racing cross country, I still use this seat because even though it was light enough that it wasn't an issue. In fact, the bike I used to race, if I had the right set of tires on it, it was coming in just under 19 pounds, which was really light for any type of mountain bike. Now, this is the Crane Creek Thud Buster. This is I think this is the second generation. In any event, they are still available in some sizes. And when I say size, I mean the size of the seat post tube. And this is the LT, the long travel version. If you have lower back problems, this is definitely God's gift. And the elastomers are available in a variety of thicknesses. Now, they've redesigned these. They're very similar. The aluminum uprights look like they're a little more hydroformed, I guess you could say. You'll see what I mean when you look at them. And instead of having a cross pin here and the cylindrical elastomers, there's one big elastomer that goes in there. The elastomers are available in a variety of viscosities, and there goes the buzzer again. So as I was saying, you can get a variety of viscous, how resistant the elastomers are. And I've actually, I think I'm running medium and medium, which was stock. I've got a couple on order in soft and extra soft, and I'm gonna experiment, find out what works best for me. Another thing I'm gonna be doing for back issues is I'm gonna go low on the PSI. Probably somewhere between 7.5 and maybe even as low as 5. I'm gonna have to experiment, find out what rides well yet still gives me as soft a ride as possible. The idea I went with fat tire was to reduce vibration, reduce the impact of small bumps. There's always going to be a certain amount that transfers through. You can't do anything about it, but I wanted to try to make it as comfortable as possible. So in that vein, I'm going to be swapping the stock fork for an air fork, air sprung fork. Now this isn't very expensive at all. It was about $125, $130. It doesn't have a ton of adjustability. It's got a variable lockout. It's of course got your air pressure setting, and it has a rebound damping adjustment, and that should do for what I'm going to be doing as far as riding it. I'll probably be running lower PSI than not. Try to take impact out of the handlebars and just kind of again soften the bike. So this will get put on today. I've been out of the bike loop for a while now. I used to stay kind of interested in what was going on in the industry as far as new products and stuff, but since I wasn't able to ride, I kind of just pushed that out of my mind. I've been looking at some of the newer bikes now, some of the cross-country bikes, some of the downhill bikes. It is amazing where the price point has gone for not even talking super high end, just a good bike, especially if you're going to go carbon fiber, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000. Interesting how it got there, you know, technology of course, but still it's hard to justify paying $10,000 for a two-wheeled pedaled vehicle. But in any event, I could certainly, you know, if I was racing, yeah, no problem, I'd see myself doing it. I cannot do that. Neither can I afford it, nor would I be able to justify spending that kind of money on just something that I'm gonna just use to try to get some cardio exercise and try to help keep myself a little healthier. But I can spend some money upgrading this and still be below even the mid-range of what's available in bikes, mountain bikes in general, and in fat tire. So things that I'm going to be changing, and I may have discussed some of this in the previous video. I'm going to be swapping the rear cassette to a SRAM 11. I've also got the long cage SRAM derailleur for the 11 gear setup. I've got the shifter for same. So I'll be swapping that assembly out. And for the time being, I'm going to keep the dual gear up here and kind of just see what works. If I go to electric, which I may or may not do now, because anyway, that's a whole longer story, but if I go to electric, I'll be going to one gear. You have to. If I stay with the non-powered, non-electric, I may go to a single front gear anyway. There are options available for this bike that are very inexpensive and nice light aluminum hardware. So we'll see. I am going to be swapping out the brakes. I have purchased a set of floating discs in the same sizes as what's on here, so I don't have to worry about changing the mounts. Everything will fit. I'm going to have 180 in the front, 160 in the rear, and I got a set of 4 piston calipers and cables and grips. Full setup is about $70. I'll give you prices and links on all this. All totaled, I'm probably going to be spending less than $1,000 on the entire bike. That includes the original cost of the bike at $500, and it should turn out to be a very nice, much higher end bike overall. And because the ALX is an aluminum frame, it's a good overall package. So you know, I certainly wouldn't be able to buy what I'm going to be putting together for the cost. Down the road, I might go with a higher end set of wheels, a lighter set of wheels, but probably not anytime soon. But A lighter set of tires would take some of the weight off the bike. Lighter inner tubes, that can make a surprising difference. The stock inner tubes, I've thought about going tubeless, but these rims are not capable of going tubeless. They're not, they don't have the right edge or rolled shape to them, so it's just not going to work. But I did find some ultra light inner tubes, 0.8 millimeter thick material. And that's about it for the big parts. So just to recap, rear cassette, rear derailleur, shifter for that, floating discs, and hydraulic brakes as opposed to mechanicals. A few little things. I'm going to get rid of these stock grips for some of the type that bolt in place. They clamp. More reliable, nicer feel, matter of choice. I'm going to be putting on some small plastic fenders, just little suckers about that big, just to kind of deflect some of what is going to fly up off of these tires if I go off trail at all. The area that I live in we've literally got hundreds of miles of bike trails. Probably, I'm not even going to try to estimate. Every housing row where I live in this area, within probably like a 10 square mile area, has bike trails behind them. Everything is linked. And so there's a lot of riding to do, and there's some hills, but a lot of the area is very flat. So if I'm just trying to get some exercise, I'm really set for that. So I may not even do that much off-roading. I won't be able to resist going out in the snow. Just can't help it. I still have a set of snowshoes that I bought right before we had a series of blizzards roll through the Washington area about 15 years ago. And that was a lot of fun, just snowshoeing around in 2.5 to 3 feet of snow. Went out with the camera and just, was out for hours, just disappeared into the woods. Anyway, so today I'm going to be swapping the fork. I have another handlebar on order. You can get riser bars as high as 80 to 90 millimeter rise. And if you have lower back problems, definitely get yourself a riser bar. If 90 is too much, go 60, 50. And some of them are very reasonably priced. Some of the higher name brands are upwards of, say, $60 to $80, and some of them you can find for as little as $30. And all of them are aluminum. So figure out what works for you, what puts you in a good position that takes the stress off your lower back. Now, there's a few other things that I want to change that are going to be part of the swap. For example, the brakes. They have the rear set up as the right-handed lever. Now, if you've ridden motorcycles, your front is your right-hand lever and your left lever is your clutch. And if you're used to that, that's the best way to do it, is to swap them around. It's easy. You just, in this case, all I would have to do would be to loosen up the brake cables, pull the cable, switch it from one side to the other, and it would be deal done. But I'm going to be switching these out for the hydraulics anyway, so not an issue. It'll be part of the process. And I'll be talking bike setup when all this stuff gets switched around. I'll be setting this up without the high-rise bars because the bars were coming up here on Christmas and everything in the mail is running a little slow. So I probably won't actually see my handlebars until probably sometime in early January, first or second week in January. One of the nice things about doing this kind of upgrade is, since this is a new bike and everything I'm taking off is nice and shiny new, I can throw all these parts up on eBay and make some of my money back. Now, one thing you got to remember when you're working with a threadless stem is once you loosen the stem here, your forks can drop right out. And these, as you can see, are, well, I'll show them to you up close in a second here. What we've got is just regular old bearings. At least they are greased. But I do have a headset, which I picked up with sealed bearings. This was about, $20, maybe $15. Now that the grips are off, remove the levers. I can leave the shift levers right where they are. So I'm going to be keeping these bars temporarily. And now back here, same routine with the cable. Now there are these little clips. Some bikes use these, some just use zip ties, and if you damage these, you can use zip ties, but if you don't damage them, you can go ahead and use those. They are very easy to pry up. A screwdriver or other pointed implement will do. I'm going to go ahead and leave the mounts for the calipers, the brackets, in place, and I should be able to use those with the new brakes, or I'll use what comes with them. So there is our old caliper, and this item here is our mounting bracket. Now this is sized for the 180 millimeter disc. It would be a slightly different size and or shape if it was for the 160 like comes on the stock Dolomite. So this is a press that we can use for the cups. We could be using it for our bottom bracket cups. It's got a lot of uses, and not very expensive. This was quite inexpensive. In particular, it's about $14. They can go certainly as high as even 50 or more, depending on whether it's name brand, etc. Now, to get the cups out, this is a very handy tool, and it's basically a pipe. It's got a nice fitting on the end for you to whack with a hammer, and what you do is you squeeze these in, which lets you slide them in from above, and they spread out once they are through the hole, and then we can go. And now we tap this one out from below. here are our old parts. I'm not going to be saving these. These are with those old the caged bearings. That's about as cheap as it gets, as old as it gets. So I'm not going to be using those. Okay, so I need to size this up and order a different headset. See, that's the problem with ordering things when the bike hasn't arrived yet. It's no problem. I can return this new one that I have here. Now what I need to do is measure the diameter here. .42 or 43. It's going to be a standard size, so I should be able to figure that out quick enough online. Okay, headset is on the way. I'll have it in 48 hours, $16, shipping free. One of the many benefits of Amazon Prime. So now that the correct size headset is here, it's time to put the fork in. The two first steps can be done in any order you please. We need to press the cups into the head tube, and we need to put this little sucker into the top of our steerer tube. Now the easiest way to do that is to take the little top cap off. You could even do it with it on, doesn't matter that much. And you need to take your shock absorber, you need to place this on top, and you need to hammer it into your shock. Now, if you have a carbon steerer tube, you cannot do this. You'll destroy it. So you would need to get a different type of piece here. I forget exactly what they're called. In any event, they make some that expand when tightened. And so that's the kind that you can just slide in and adjust the nut as needed. This type you use for a steel steer, and you got to hammer it in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm not going to show it on camera. Basically, you need to put the fork on the ground, hold this carefully upright, and hit it in pretty hard. So. Takes a little bit of effort, but easy enough to do. You don't need to push it in too far. Just make sure it's at least 1/8 of an inch below the top, and you're set. And now to press in the cups is where we need this handy tool. Just making sure our cups are identical, and they are. There wasn't a top or a bottom. For some reason I was having a hard time getting this started. I think the threads may be a little mauled up, so I'm just going to start it from the opposite end. So, yeah, see if the threads get a little compressed or whatever, you can get it off, but you can't always get it back on easy. It may have been dropped or something. It's going to take a second. Now I'm going to need to get a wrench for the bottom here. Now, once it feels like it cannot go any further, do a visual inspection. Make sure that it is seated flat all the way around, top and bottom. and then you're good to go. That's all there is to it. And again, this is a tool that you'll need if you ever do a full crankshaft swap, where you're putting in a different bottom bracket depending on what's already there. Some of them, from the looks of this one, it has the type that have the pressed cups. So now we can put our top bearing in place. I've already slid the ring down here at the bottom. Slid the top ring. And this is where we need some spacers, such as these. That may be all we need in this case. Now, what we're going to want to do here is keep this a little loose for right now, because this may all seat in a little bit. So we want to take our screw here for our little headset. Okay, and after we ride it the first time, we should check that, make sure everything is still snug. In fact, we should probably only, ride it around a little bit, like around the parking lot, hop a few curbs, whatever, and then check to make sure there's no play, because things may seat in a little tighter. But if you tighten that down tight enough initially, you should pull everything together nicely. And just like before, I'm going to need to adjust this again once I've got bars on and everything. And as you can see, there's been a few changes. I didn't get all of this on camera, unfortunately. I had a little camera issue. Didn't realize it wasn't recording at the time. I've gone ahead and swapped out some cabling. I've got the rear derailleur on, and I changed the cable on the front derailleur to a new one. Need a different size wrench there. But none of that was difficult, and I'll go over parts of that for you. I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. When you're doing things like this headset piece here, try to make sure you've got the same spacing above and below on either side of this crown. That if you feel one of the bolts like not going in easy, it's stiff, that may mean that you've got this at an angle, and you may need to just loosen and adjust until you get that correct. You want it the same left to right as well. You don't want it torqued on cockeyed. Now, again, these should be torqued to 6 Newton meters. And if you're not sure what things should be torqued to, look around. There's usually some text printed somewhere on your headset. Most steel headsets are going to be 6. And since I'm going to be adjusting this anyway, it's not perfectly centered at the moment, and it's definitely not at the angle I'm going to ultimately want it to be. So I'm just snugging it down for now. so it doesn't go anywhere. But when I do the fit and setup of the bike to fit me, at that point I will be torquing those. These little rubber things here are really handy. When the bike arrives, the three of them are stuck together. Just make sure we're pointing in the right direction here. These little things right here, they come like this as one piece, and you can just pull them apart and space them out like that. And what that does, it prevents the cables from bouncing, and they'll tap against your top tube. You'll hear them. It's not going to do much damage to the paint. It conceivably could over time wear at the paint, but the noise is what's annoying, because you hear something that you don't think you should hear. So if you space those out 3 apart like that, you should be fine. You shouldn't have any noise issues, because the rubber is going to tap against the metal. Okay, so time to put the front wheel on. So, because of the fork design versus the standard fork, I can't flip it pointing backwards, so instead I've got it straight up next to the fork. It's basically shielded by the shock tube, so that's not going to have any issue. When you're dealing with, fat tire bikes, they are inherently heavy. So anything you can do to pare that weight down kind of helps. And I've done things that have added weight. Like I've added a heavier seat post, and I've added a front fork that has suspension as opposed to just a standard steel one. I did not weigh one against the other. Maybe I should have done that for you. Sorry. It's already together. I'm not going to take it apart. Regardless, I was going to do this no matter what the weight cost, because the ride quality was worth it. Now, you see this little rubber piece here? Do not remove that. That is not like some shipping thing or whatever. Those of you who are familiar with suspension on bikes will chuckle when you hear me say that, because, like, of course, duh, don't do that. But people have actually done it, and then you're kind of stuck. And what that does is, when you are setting up how much air you need, most forks have a sticker on them somewhere. It's usually like on the back, right there it is, right down here. And that's going to say, okay, for a rider that weighs, X pounds, you should put in Y amount of pressure. That is basically a yardstick to go by. But it is not 100% accurate, and your weight is going to vary based on what you're wearing. So if it's winter versus summer, right off the bat, temperature affects volumes of air, and also the amount of clothing that you wear in the winter versus in the summer is dramatically different and much heavier in the winter. And I'm going to go over winter clothing with you guys in another video, make some recommendations. I've done a lot of winter riding and just love it. I used to train year round. I would had a cyclocross bike I would take out in light snow and just cold days, and just go put miles on it. Excuse me. What this does is it gives you a gauge, so when you compress the front shock, or you sit on the fork on the bike in a normal riding position, and the fork collapses a bit, it's going to move this up. And as you can see, there's some, you might not be able to see, there's some writing here, probably laser etched into the side of the fork. And that gives you a guide to exactly where you're sitting at a normal riding position with, your normal body position. Because if you're like leaning back or leaning too far forward, you're going to get a different result here slightly. So the position you normally ride at rest, where does this end up? And all you got to do to reset it is slide it down and then sit on the bike again, and it's going to get pushed up to where your marker is, and then you just leave it. You know, if you want to, you can roll it up out of the way, you know, like this, so it's not likely to catch on some branch or something and get damaged, because you're always going to need that, because you're going to be wanting to check your forks air pressure on a regular basis. They can lose some pressure, you know, you want to, anytime you haven't ridden in a few weeks or more, check your pressure before you go ride. You know, just sit on the bike, see where your gauging is at, and if it's okay, it's fine. You know, if it's where it was the last time, don't worry about it. You don't have to put in any air. But that's what you use it for, and I'm sure I'll talk about that again when I actually am doing the bike setup video and I show you this. And there's a lot to setting a bike up. You know, the first thing you want to do is get your leg length on the seat right. You don't want to do handlebars until you've gotten that done, and then you go for, you know, how far forward or back the seat should be, combined with the length of your leg stroke. Then you go up to the front and work on the angle of your handlebars. You might want to get a different stem or gooseneck, as they used to be called, to move the handlebars closer to you. You might be putting on a set of risers, and that's going to make a change as well to your position. And then we go to things like that for the fork, getting your fork set up. So I thought I'd go ahead and mount the front fender. This is by 50/50. The front fender is mainly to keep mud from flying up into your face, so that's why they're very small. They don't need to be big. You don't want something bouncing around, especially with a mountain bike. Now, they provided 6 zip ties with this, which is one of the nice things about the 50/50. Some of them don't include the zip ties, and you got to go get them on your own. As you can see, there's several sets of holes. They recommend these for the front and these for the rear. The rear would be if you were mounting it off your back, below your seat, to keep mud from flying up onto your back, which I'm going to be using a different one for that. I added 2 more. I may not need the 2 top ones. I may just need one on either side, but I want to make sure this conforms well to the fork and shapes properly. So I may go ahead and use all of them. I'm definitely going to use the 2 on the legs, just to make sure that this mounts up well. And there's different ways of running these. They could be run in and back through and then around. It depends on what you're trying to do as far as the shape of how this is going to fit and stay. So it's also a lot easier to run your zip ties in through first and then put them in. So if I don't need a couple pairs of them, I can, like the 2 on top, I can pull them out really easy. But if I need to add them once I've already done a couple of them, it's very, very difficult. So better to do them first, put one in each set of holes. For example, I may not be able to use 2 on the legs. I may only be able to use 1 on each side because of the shape here. So I'm going to put the lowest ones on loosely to keep the legs in place. And then I'm going to start with the 2 innermost top ones. I want to make sure that is centered. Otherwise it's going to sit crooked. And I think I am going to go ahead and use the 2 other ones as well. Got one of them twisted. There we go. Yeah, see, by using, since this is a fat tire, using the 4 at the top kind of spreads this out across the fork joiner here, the hoop, and I am not going to be able to use the second pair on the legs because they are right here near the top. They would need to be longer. Having the pair down here on the bottom of the legs is going to be just fine. I'm going to go ahead and use a pair of pliers to tug on these a little bit and get them tighter, and then use a pair of cutters to trim off the excess. I'm also twisting the cables around so that the knot, or the part where they lock into, is out of the way. It's not sticking out to the side. Also try to cut these as flush as you can, because if you have any of this sticking out, you probably know that that becomes a sharp edge for you to gouge yourself on somewhere along the way. Especially if you do take this out in snow, mud, etc. Having that is going to be really nice. As you can see, it doesn't interfere with anything. There's plenty of space. I can totally slide my hand underneath here. But that is going to keep a lot of mud and water and stuff out of my face. And it'll make bike cleanup a little easier too.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel. If you click the bell icon, you'll receive notifications every time I launch a new video. Thank you for watching.